Hello, it's Darren at Moonhair Studio on the week before Christmas. And so I thought I'd bring you something that we've been lacking in 2020, a little splash of colour. Is it good for your project, or is it just a pointless affectation? So first off, I have put chapters in this video so you can get to those from the video itself or in the description below if there's something you specifically want to look at. Now, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been working on a comedy podcast for I Hear Voices Theatre Company, and they wanted a Star Wars-esque theme, John Williams sort of composition for the theme tune. And so you can see I've set up an orchestral piece here. I've got all of my different sections organized quite nicely into separate folders. So I've got woods, brass, strings, and my percussion down here. And you know, this isn't a huge orchestral template by any means. 39 instruments. But it's still a little bit confusing to navigate around if you just want to know where you are, where your strings are, because Cubase has just allocated sequentially colors as I've been inputting tracks. I've got quite a large color template set up, but you might actually only have the default 16 or 32. But regardless, this is just a sort of color explosion. I mean, bring up the mixer. I mean, it looks quite attractive, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And color can be such a useful way to navigate around your project. So what I like to do is set up my separate sections or instruments with their own color that I use again and again. So let's have a look at how I do this and how you could. So I've done videos on this before with previous versions of Cubase, so slightly different to 10.5, but you'll get the idea. So if you want to have a look at those links above and below. I've actually set up a macro which I can just get to from my F4 key on my Qcon, and if I click that, Cubase will automatically color my instruments in the way that I want to see them. So here you can see that all my woodwinds are orange, brass is red, strings are blue, and percussion is gold or brown. I've gone into a little bit more detail really, because I always color my high instruments in lighter colors, and the lower you get down the register, the darker the color. You don't have to do this. I mean, you can just pick one color for woods, brass, strings, percussion, or whatever instruments you've got. I've got template, as I say, set up for a lot of different instruments, and you can see I've got guitars, bass guitars, and what have you. I instantly know what an instrument is by just looking at the color on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up a really simple 4-color template for your project, and then you can adapt this in any way that you want to. And the first thing we need to do is actually create the little programs which have a look at your title and work out what color it should be. So we'll go into the project window, we'll go down to Project Logical Editor, and that brings up this screen here. And it's a 2-part screen. It's a filter for conditions to start off with, so it will actually look for something in Cubase, and then if that condition is met, it will do something. So in our case, what we want it to do is to read the names along the template, and if it spots anything that indicates a color, then it will apply that color to the track. So let's set one up. We'll add a condition, and we're going to search in the name field, and we're going to look for something that contains brackets WW, because that's my code for woodwinds. And obviously in my more complex template I have woodwinds high, mid, low, and whatever, but we'll just do woodwinds for now. And then we need to say what is it going to do. Well, we're going to set the color to whatever color you want. So in my case, I tend to use oranges for woodwinds. So that is basically all you have to do to code your your names. So we'll save this one now. We'll store the preset and we'll call it color WW and click OK. So that's now saved. Now let's do one for brass, strings and percussion. And now we've got this template up. This is really straightforward. So we can just do STR for strings and then select what color we want. So I tend to go for one of these sort of blues, and then we just save that as STR. And then we'll do one for brass. So we'll just change that to, whoops, sorry, BRS, and choose nice bright red. And then again, we will just resave that under the new name. And finally, we'll do one for percussion. So, and you can basically use any name that you like for your various instruments. Let's just use that one. That's fine. And we'll store that. Okay, now the reason for the brackets is because when it searches, if for some reason you had a name here, you've described something and it happened to have two W's in it, then it could color it as woodwinds, and it was nothing to do with woodwinds. So putting the brackets around it means that you're never going to have that combination in just a normal name. So it's always going to be unique and it will always know that it's woodwinds. So I would suggest either a star or bracket or something just to differentiate. So how do we actually apply that? I mean, the most straightforward way is really just to go into the project menu and go down to the presets, the project logical presets, and just pick one and click on it. So for example, if we click on strings, now you can see all of our strings have been colored blue. But that's not very convenient if you've got dozens of these set up, or even really if it's just four, you don't want to have to keep clicking backwards and forwards here. You might as well just color the track as it is. So what we really need to do is set up a macro, and that's very straightforward. So what you want to do is go into the edit menu, go down to key commands, and this brings up all of the different sort of key commands that you can use in Cubase. But what we're interested in is macros. So if macros aren't showing, just click this button here, show macros, and this is all the ones that there'll be some in here already that you won't have programmed. There'll be default ones, but we're going to make a new macro. So we click on new. I'm going to call it something suitable. We'll use the American version, color, and that is what we're going to put those little logical editor presets into. So scan down your list, have a look for process project logical editor, and find the ones that we've programmed in. So that's these four here. And it's as simple, I don't know if you can shift, no you can't. So it's just as simple as clicking on them and adding them one by one to your macro. And you can see as I do this, they're just appearing down here. So we've got four, and that's it. We've set up our color macro now. Now, the easiest way to use that macro really would be to tie it to either a key on your keyboard or a function button in your MIDI controller, your MIDI control surface. So we'll do it with the keyboard itself. We're going to click up here and type in a key. I'll select Shift Y because I know that's not being used. And now just go back up to the menu here to macros and open that up, and you'll see we've got color here. So we can click on that and assign it to Shift Y and then click OK. So now if I press Shift Y, there we go. it has coloured all of our tracks in the correct colours. So that's the simple way to do it. If you want to program it into the function key of the QCOM Pro X or another Mackie controller, you'll need to go into Studio, Studio Setup, click on your controller, and then you'll find a list of keys here that you can program again. So that's empty. We'll put it into Shift F7 and we'll click on Macro. And once again, we need to select the correct one, which is Color. And we apply that. Click OK. And of course, now if I click Shift and F7, it does the same thing. So that's a very straightforward way to colour in all of your tracks at the same time, and obviously that does the mixer as well, so we can instantly see where we are. So the other place where I use colour in a very practical way for mixing, specifically with gain staging, where you really need to be very careful about what you're sending into your buffers later on down the line, is the metering colours. Now, as standard, Cubase comes with colour set that looks like this. So that doesn't really tell you much. It's very similar all the way up. It goes from a light blue to a very, very sort of pale green. And I don't find that that actually shows me information at a glance that I can use. It obviously tells me whereabouts my peaks are, but much easier if you go into your edit menu, down to preferences, and select metering appearance, and actually change this here. So you've got different colors that are available. You can just click on a color picker and choose whatever color you like and click OK. So you can change the color of the bands, but you can also drag them around to where you want them. There aren't many bands here, so if I add in another one, I've now got several bands here that I can adjust to different colors. So you can either drag or type in here where you want your different bands to be. Now I've got a preset stored, which is this one. And so you can see here that I've got a green zone, and then at -18 to -10 I've got my amber zone, which is really that sort of area where with gain staging you really like to aim for, so that you've got plenty of headroom here as everything stacks up further down the line through your buses and then finally to your stereo master bus. If you're seeing flashes of white, then you've pushed it past 0 and you're potentially looking at distortion or clipping. You can push it into the red, yeah, you can have that peaking up into the red, but what you don't want to see is just hammering up into the red all the time, especially further down your mix chain. So what does that look like in my mixer? So now instantly as I glance along, I can see exactly where my problems are. Look, flashes of white over here show me that this is obviously massing up into something quite monstrous and clipping down that end. But equally, I can see those areas where I'm just pushing nicely into the amber with the occasional red. It's just very easy to see at a glance, even on these tiny little meters up here, or if you're in your project screen, these little meters that you can see along here, instantly very obvious where your issues are. So I think that's a really useful way to use colour for at a glance metering in Cubase. Enjoyed that. I hope that 2021 is better for many of you than 2020 has been, and let's just keep making music and just enjoy ourselves. If you're into like and subscribe, then feel free, but otherwise I'll see you on the next one.